Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition, and this week it comes from Tom Phillips, Brighton podcast, our regular guest on this show. Tom, welcome back. How are you keeping? Are you well?
Very well, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Yourself?
Yeah, can't complain. Nice and sunny. Although I wish my confidence was as bright and booming as the sunshine is today, going down to the Amex on Sunday. I'm not looking forward to it, I have to be honest.
Oh, why is that? Why is that?
It's the history. It's the record that Newcastle have down there. Although they have gone to places like Old Trafford, the Emirates in the League Cup, and Spurs as well, away where they've had not the best of records in recent years and managed to rid themselves of those terrible records. So keeping everything crossed that they can do it again. How are you feeling about it?
Oh, it's shaky. I think if any Brighton fan is going optimistic in this match, I think that it's almost borderline delusional. Almost, we keep on finding ourselves in the highest of highs and the lowest of lows this season when it comes to form. It's been incredibly inconsistent. We're on a bit of a rough patch at the moment. Yeah, we won against West Ham, but we scraped through West Ham, and really West Ham should have easily have got at least a point in that. So we were very, very lucky, and we've been riding our luck for some time. And I have to say, we've been riding our luck a lot with you guys this season too. And I can't see us if we have any more luck in this, and I'm just going to spend my mortgage on the lottery.
Yeah, two defeats for Newcastle against Brighton this season. One up here at St James Park in the league, and the other up here as well in the FA Cup. Really strangely, I just assumed Brighton would doing all right, and then I looked at the form coming in this game, and actually they've just been horrendous really over recent weeks. And we spoke a bit about this in the match preview with John Gibson, but I was shocked to look at the form table and to see how bad they've actually been. I mean, do you feel like Brighton have this kind of reputation in the eyes of people who don't really follow them week in, week out, was kind of a nice football club that do things right on and off the pitch, nice to watch, young up and coming manager, brings talent through, etc., etc. And maybe people kind of overlook the actual form week in, week out, as opposed to looking where they are at the league table?
I think it's very easy for a lot of people from the outside looking in and just seeing, ticking all the right boxes. We've got an owner who's a fan and has very deep pockets. Our recruitment is sound. We've got a great youth development, youth strategy in place. And, we seem to always find the next gem, no matter who we sell. And then, like you say, we've got a very good coach in Herz, and even Herz sadly has unjustifiably, I would say, been getting a bit of stick from some corners of the fan base. I think if you look at the season as a whole and you look at the shocking stats of our injuries, and I know I've said that the last time I was on here, the injuries still continue, and it's been a very much a frustrating thing. We've missed players, and I know he's on the wrong side of 30, but like the likes of James Milner coming in and just playing a 20-25 minute cameo off the bench and just managing the midfield, like dictating the tempo of the match. We don't have that yet. Probably Belieber maybe, but I mean, he's very young. There's a bit of naivety with him, but I mean, he scored an absolute peach of a winner against West Ham, and he's got that in his locker, but he's yet to be that complete midfielder yet, and that takes time. And I just think that we're just got in this frustrating situation where we just haven't got the answers in the injuries, which have been bad, yes. But on the plus side, we're still doing very well in the league. Like, we're competing in Europe almost. Dare I say that? Because, Palace could absolutely ruin everything, and they'll be talking about it for the next decade if that happens. So I'm really just hoping if we go for a fight, we've got to get in the best possible position. But I equally wouldn't be upset if we miss Europe. It's been such a weird season in that situation.
Well, I guess it shows you how well maybe you've done in the early part of the season to be on this bad run of form, the West Ham game aside, and to still be within a really good chance of qualifying for Europe. But what you've just said there about the gaffer actually makes perfect sense, because it must have been middle of this month. So, well, by the time this comes out, middle of last month, I was just driving home and flicking through the radio station. I turned on to 5 Live, and the commentator said, "Oh, all I heard was you don't know what you're doing," and Tony Bloom's in the away end, and I was like, that can't be the words the gaffer, surely, which shows you how detached I've been from looking at the Brighton form of late. I mean, to me, he's a manager with the world at his feet, kind of thing. You know, he's going to go places. Why has it gone so badly in recent weeks, do you think?
I would say it's the lack of the squad depth because of just because of the injuries. We've invested massively in our back four, but Dunk's been injured, Van Heck's been out for a while. Veltman, who has been so crucial in our match and our style, he's been out for a while, and there's really not a lot of sign of him coming back. We've just had Solly March back, which has been a huge plus, but Cardioglu has been off. O'Reilly hasn't really hit the ground running because of that horrendous injury he got against Crawley in the first 5 minutes of his debut for us, and he hasn't really settled in. And then you've got João Pedro, who lost his head against Brentford. And to be honest with you, you speak to any Brighton fan, he's always had that in his locker, that kind of little aggression that goes a step too far. And he did something stupid in front of the referee's eyes, and the referee had no choice but to send him off. It was very silly of him to do that. He's still going to be suspended, which is a shame because he's a big game player, and we need those big game players even more so than now. If we look on the paper right now, we've got 4 matches left. Wolves are sorted. Liverpool have won the league, and Tottenham, well, they're just praying that their season hangs on hope of the Europa League final. Either way, even if they aren't in the competition, the last game of the season, we've got 3-0 games on paper, but we've then got Newcastle this weekend, who are very much sniffing for a Champions League spot, in a fantastic position to do so, and they'll be looking to get a message of intent to say we can beat these ugly runs at grounds like the Amex and really solidify ourselves as a Champions League, a top 4 side again. So that'll be the answer.
Do you think then the key move for Newcastle United is to hit Brighton early, try and get the first goal, or even just the first flying hard challenge into somebody, and try and whip the home crowd up into a bit of discontent? Because I'm assuming, given what you've said, looking at the form, that just because they beat West Ham very late on, that kind of undercurrent of discontent amongst some fans won't have gone away, and it might not take much for Newcastle United to get that to resurface on Sunday.
It's been growing for a while, the discontent, and it's something that's been brewing probably around about the new year, which is quite sad. And I'm actually going to say this is quite pathetic, really, from some Brighton fans. I think when they saw how well we done under De Zerbi, and we had the taste of Europa League, and we played against some of European football heritage, Marseille, Ajax, Athens, Roma, like they have Champions leagues under their belts, and European successes, and they're the top clubs in the whole of Europe, really consistently in Europe. And I think there's a lot of people that have the belief that we could potentially be in Europe consistently, but I think a lot of people need to realize that we got Europa League, but we're not at that point yet where we can consistently be there. But I think they see the potential, but they expect the potential to happen now, and I think that's the disconnect we're having. And then we're just not getting in those performances. It's adding a bit more frustration. Going back to João Pedro, he's very good at trying to egg in on the crowd and doing stuff like that, but sometimes that's come back to bite him when it looked like the team didn't really want to perform for the badge, and sometimes he's got a bit of stick from it, sadly. It just seems there is that kind of like this insatiable appetite from some corners of the Brighton fan base, and is it a little bit toxic? Maybe, but I think it's just part and parcel of the modern game, sadly. And I think the majority of Brighton fans are very much keen to get rid of that discontent and really push on. We've got 4 games to really judge how our season goes. An outside chance of Europa League football. I mean, it is outside. It's 6 points behind Aston Villa at the moment. But if we can get eighth, I'll be very, very happy. But I'm very happy with how this season's gone, considering the fact that, we've missed more than half our squad at times, which is a mental stat to say. We've lost more combined days on injuries than anyone else in the Premier League. I know that, there's some clubs out there that really moan and drive home the whole injuries have ruined our season card. But my word, ours have been horrendous, but we've always been in the European conversation, which is encouraging. So hopefully this season, I'll take it as a write-off, and then next season we'll see how we do.
Very, very interesting. So how do you look at this game then? Are you looking at it as in, oh my God, it's Newcastle coming to the Amex, or are you looking at it thinking, you know what, Newcastle aren't great on the road against the top 12 sides, have only won once. We're at home here. The record's awful when they do travel to the Amex. We can go at them, and because there is a prize worth chasing, and we are close to achieving it.
I'm seeing it as we've got Newcastle United. It's the toughest game on paper, and I'll love to see the lads turn up. That's all I want to see. I want to go to that ground and really see them push on and just keep hold of that belief. Herz is very big on togetherness and belief in one another and that trust. He's very, very big on that. I think when you saw the celebrations on Believers' winner last weekend, you can see how that meant, and that almost that sigh of relief. But also the belief that he has in the team, and he's been more animated on the touchline now. I mean, there was that ridiculous stat about how long he spent on the bench in comparison to others in the league, which really just to me it means nothing. But having that little bit of animation on the touchline, that eggs the fans on, and that kind of gets people to like egg him on and kind of go, yeah, we've got your back here, Hertzler. We'll push the team on with you as well. So I think when the manager sets the tone, it goes that far. But I'm excited for the Newcastle match. I always look forward to Newcastle because I just got because of the Championship days when we were both fighting for the title. It was always a good match to watch, and I think seasons gone by, it's been quite an entertaining match. I remember a couple of years ago, Nick Pope decided to play with the Midas touch and deny every opportunity of us keeping 3 points at home, and got yourself a point on the road. And I think that was when you guys got Champions League the last time round, and you could see the quality that you have there. And then you got the likes of Tonali, who I'm worried about. I mean, your midfield three is definitely going to be bullying our duo in Hinchelwood and Belieber. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for what our youngsters can do in response. I'm excited for what our makeshift back four can do. And I'm excited to see what the likes of Welbeck can bring to the table once again.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Danny Welbeck, except when he plays against Newcastle United, because he always seems to do something, which is good for you guys and not for us. Lots of interesting points you made there. I mean, first off, our midfield three, that's going to be really interesting to see who lines up, because Joe Linton is likely to miss the game through a knee injury. So I think it's probably likely to be Joe Willock, who didn't impress against Ipswich in the last game when he was given the start. But I think this game will be slightly more his cup of tea, because I'm assuming Brighton will have the majority of the ball and try and control the game. Would I be right in that assumption?
Yeah, that's probably right.
So in that instance, then Newcastle can absorb it. Willie can take the ball and then run at the Brighton defence into space, maybe on the counter, and that's where he's best at. And I think when Joe Willock gets the opportunity to do that, we will see him at his best. But it's a massive game for him if he does start. And you mentioned there your makeshift back four. Do you want to just explain a little bit more about that? And I guess that's what Newcastle United will be targeting, given it's not your first choice back line.
Yes, so I think we just need to look at the lineup in the last game we've had against West Ham. Again, we were losing to West Ham for quite a while, and West Ham fans very much enjoyed that fact with a classic chant. I'm not going to repeat it on here, but for many fans who go every week, you know what that is. Our back four that week was Mats Fifa, who is typically a holding role midfielder, Lewis Dunk, our captain and only fit centre back at the moment, Pervis Estupiñán, who has been a bit up and down bit inconsistent during the season, but still on the better side at the moment in comparison to the whole team as a whole. And then we've got Belieber, who has been, again, another holding role midfielder. He's a very good ball winning midfielder, but he had to play a makeshift role at the back because Adam Webster is out injured, which has been a real shame because he seemed to have he had a really good redemption arc this season. I think if you spoke at the start of the summer, who do you think we wouldn't be upset if we saw them leave? It would be Adam Webster. And I think even some people would say they'll happily drive him to the next club. It just hasn't really worked out the last couple of seasons. But under Herz, he's been playing like Maldini almost, dare I say it, which is why some fans called him Webdini, in a funny, cringy way, maybe. But it's been one that always catches on with the fan base. And then you've got Van Hecker, who has been recovering from a horrible concussion-related injury. I'm sure many people will have seen it on the highlights in the Brentford defeat a couple of weeks back. And he's been a rock for us. He really has. And he's very much, again, another young, upcoming defender who's been in the Netherlands international lineup, been sitting next to Virgil van Dijk. He's a leader as well, which I really like. He's very much kind of like charging everyone, dictating the defense. He shows a lot of leadership qualities and a lot of strong mental attributes, which I'm a big fan of, particularly in that back four. So we've missing quite a lot of characters. And like I said, I mentioned about Joel Veltman and Tariq Lamptey, both of which are doubts. So again, we've got no right back, and our left back situation is very much resting on the Stupinan. So our depth at the back at the moment in terms of availability is really bad. So yeah, we're doing a makeshift at the moment, and it works sort of. Last week, I think we won because West Ham are very poor. And I think if it was anyone else, I'm sorry to say, I'm going to be a pessimist, and we would have easily lost by half time. So it'll be interesting to see the response these guys have this weekend, because I think a lot of them will be thinking, we've just got to leave everything on the pitch here.
And do you think you'll get that response?
I think we will. I think the way that we won against West Ham was special. It was one of those where you absolutely lose yourself as a fan. You're really invested in the moment, and then everyone loves a limbs moment, don't they? They love it when the fans just go absolutely mental with a certain goal in a certain way, and that's what we got. And the way we saw Herz just running down the side of the touchline, going absolutely mental with his coaching staff. Those things are special, and they really hit the fan base. They'll hit the players that next morning in the training session and be like, right, here we go, guys. Now we've got Newcastle. Let's see what we can do. So that's what's going to be churning at them throughout the training sessions this week. So I think they'll have another really good response. But I think it goes without saying that we know how strong Newcastle will be this weekend.
And the videos and footage of the manager running down the touchline, a bit like Mourinho famously once did, he looked like a man very relieved. Like it was more than just 3 points. It was the end to this horrendous run of form. It was maybe silencing a few of the critics, which have been a bit vocal in recent weeks. But then that also provokes the question of, is he under pressure? Like, is he under pressure for his job? Or even though it's gone as bad as it has, is he relatively safe, you think?
He's relatively safe, very much so. I mean, the guy's the same age as me. He's in the same school year as me, which I think that just shows the mantra of how far he has come. And I mean, I know a lot of people say he's 32, but Barber said in an interview earlier this season, they questioned him about his age and whether or not that's the lack of experience comes out. But Hertzler pointed out in response, goes, I've got as much coaching experience as someone in their 40s who has played throughout his career in a normal way. He suffered a horrendous injury when he was younger, forced him into retirement. And since then, he's been coaching well into his 20s and now into his early 30s. So that's kind of almost like it levels out. He's got that coaching experience behind him, but also as well, he's got that youth and he's that eagerness to learn still. If you read, there was an article in The Athletic, Andy Naylor, our Brighton reporter, said how a lot of the people in Brighton upper management board, if you will, were scratching their heads about the criticisms that Herz has had, particularly round about the Brentford defeat. You know, there were some fans wanting to confront Tony Bloom about it, and it was a bit. It was a bit bewildering for a lot of fans, and then you see why they do get upset because things aren't on the table. But Tony Bloom's very much a big picture man. He sees the bigger picture and he thinks, no, we're a project club, and Herz is invested in this. He sees what we do. He's a big believer in that, and he's very much invested in the squad. And he's a leader, and the players love him. So that he hasn't lost the dressing room, and I don't think he ever will. And I don't think he's ever going to lose the trust of Tony Bloom either. It's very hard for him to sack someone. He's only ever done it twice. Poyet for that was gross misconduct, and Houghton, which was because the club wanted to go in a different direction. And also as well, we had to rely on Crystal Palace to beat Cardiff City that season. And I think that really was the kiss of death for Houghton, sadly. But since then, Bloom is very much a case of, no, I'll double down if I have to. He did it with Hippier, and Hippier offered his resignation 3 times before he left over Christmas. So he's very much a man that would believe in his managers and the people that he appoints. So I really can't see him being under pressure as much as maybe what is written in the press or what is discussed. You know, form-wise, he doesn't look good. He's under pressure. He's been looking for Europe. You know, there were times that early on we were whispering about Champions League football, but no, I can't see him. I see a lot of encouraging signs, and I think next season is going to be very exciting if we can get a rock solid squad in that has minimal injuries. As much as that would be dreamy, we know that injuries will always happen, but I think Hertzler is only just about getting started, which will be exciting to see.
Which is good news because I like the story, I like the journey he's been on. I don't like to see managers sacked too soon. So fingers crossed, even if he loses on Sunday to Newcastle United, that he is indeed safe for the foreseeable future. I mean, you mentioned Sammy Hippier there. Totally forgot that even happened. I mean, I just got in a little look there just to remind myself of just how bad it was. I'm sure you don't need reminding, Tom. What a throwback that is. You mentioned there the makeshift back four and the injuries you guys have suffered. I mean, this is where Alexander Issac must keep you awake at night.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's kind of like it's almost a free for him. He'll be thinking it's a free hit because the only main threat he really has at the back on paper is Dunk, and sadly, Dunk hasn't had his best season for us. But he's been here for 14 years. I think he's allowed to have one that's a bit below par. All great defenders have those moments, which is okay. It's just the way football is. But when you've got someone like Alexander Issac, who has been doing wonders for my fantasy football team, equally, I'm not enjoying the fact that I'm going to be seeing 90 minutes of Issac out for blood almost, because he's world class. I will say that. I'm not a big fan of saying that line, but you know, Issac is truly he's a world class finisher. He's fantastic in the air. He's that all round number 9 that, you know, Shearer absolutely adores him, and I think that speaks volumes really. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to seeing what Issac can do in 90 minutes against us. That's for sure. And he'll be looking out for revenge, because you could just tell at the end of the match how annoyed he was the last time we were up at St James's Park. So I think he'll be looking to make a bit of a statement of intent on his own accord, not just for Newcastle, but for himself as well.
Yeah, and I think he's been a little bit off the pace in recent weeks as well, which says something concerning he's still scoring goals and creating others for his teammates, but he's not been himself, in my opinion. And I feel like he's due one game where everything just comes off for him. And, you know, recent games, I mean, he scored the penalty against Ipswich, but he snapped the 2 chances beforehand, which he probably should have put in the back of the net, or the Isaac earlier in the season would have done. So I feel like one of those games is going to come before the end of the season. Fingers crossed it is Brighton, because I like you. I need him for me fantasy team, but also I need him to fire Newcastle to the Champions League. In terms of the one weakness, Tom, that you think Newcastle will be exploiting, what are we going for?
I mean, you're going to be exploiting the right back. our right back is Matt Zweifer at the moment. And while he had a very good shift in his makeshift role, I think when you have, either Murphy or Gordon on that side, again, they're going to be thinking it's Christmas all over again for them.
Sorry, did you say you said your right hand side? Yeah, so
Yeah.
Newcastle's left.
So our weaknesses are right back. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
so it'll be Harvey Barnes, I would think, who
uh,
is keeping Anthony Gordon out of the side because he just can't stop scoring or assisting. So Harvey Barnes is in the form of his career, I would argue, right now. So he'll be looking forward to that challenge, I would imagine.
I mean, if I was Eddie Howe as well, I'd be giving Harvey Barnes maybe one half and then Anthony Gordon the other, because I think this could be a great opportunity for him on paper to have a confidence boost. I don't want to say that as a Brighton fan, but I can't help but think I've got two very, very talented left wingers here, and Anthony Gordon for the second half anyway, fully refreshed with the pace that he has. He'll be catching the right backs off guard, and the way Vifa's been playing, he's been playing almost inverted and really going in to help support the midfield almost. So he'll probably be looking to double up in the midfield just to help out with whoever will be your midfield three as well. But if you pass it out wide and you've got that acres of space, it's a winger's dream. So I think that's going to be the space where Newcastle will exploit. And I am not looking forward to those balls being pinged over our back line and either Barnes or Gordon tackling into it, cross it in, Issac, goal. I think that's how I can see at least, I reckon, 5 opportunities there. Whether they turn into goals is down to Verbruggen. He's a great shot stopper. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. Again, he's been someone who's got a bit of unfair stick in our fan base, but I trust him, and it'll be interesting to see how he fares against someone like Issac, Gordon, Barnes, Murphy, whoever really, even Tonali, who's again scored some pretty decent goals as well.
Well, we saw against Ipswich, the instruction was clearly to target their left-hand side. Their number one left back was missing through suspension, and you could see Murphy and Trippier going down Newcastle's right. I think off the top of my head, it was 27 crosses they attempted to put in the box. I think only 8 were deemed successful, but with stats, it was probably more like 12 or 13. But that shows you that if they're given the instruction of get the ball in the box, target the full backs, and then give Isaac and others the service that they can do it. So one to watch on Sunday. I imagine that instruction will be passed on, but on the opposite flank. Eddie Howe will be back on the touchline for the first away game since his illness, which will be good to see. I mean, what do you make of the job he's done this season?
Brilliant, I think. I think anyone who is seeing it as a glass half empty, I'll be thinking, why do you think he's even half full? I think he's been fantastic for Newcastle since he's joined. He has had a bit of pressure under him a fair bit at times, but he's lifted a trophy for Newcastle, and I think that's been very much long awaited for that club. I think it's a massive bonus the fact that he's English. I think a lot of people in many corners of the media and world of football in this country anyway talk about the lack of successful English managers at the moment. The fact that he's got some silverware under his belt is fantastic. And I think him and his backroom staff, their testament is a fantastic story. It's a proper underdog story with what he's done over at Bournemouth, worked his way up, didn't work well at Burnley, but then he went back to Bournemouth and, they made them into a driving force again. And, he's at Newcastle, and I think he's at home there. And like you said, he's recovered well, which is fantastic news on the personal note. But equally as well, that's just going to add, I think that's going to add more for Newcastle to really set themselves up for a really, really strong game. The last time Brighton had something similar was when Tom Lockyer came out onto the pitch for Luton Town, and we got absolutely battered by them, and that was under De Zerbi. So I'm expecting very much the same thing, in the kind of like the Newcastle fans are going to turn up for him. The players are so incredibly invested in him, and I think a lot of those players that he's done and coached them and changed them around, Joe Linton is one of them, Murphy's another. The way he's managed to kind of like get this sense of belief and build them up from relegation threatened or mid-table mediocrity to like solid top 5, top 6 consistent football club, it's testament to him and his man management, and that's fantastic. He's not overly reliant on a bottomless bank account. He's been very much committed to who he wants. He's got them, and he's coached them into the style of play, and everyone's very much invested. And it's brilliant to see. You got nothing but high praise for him, which is very annoying because he's not at the Albion. But then again, we've got Herz. But I think a lot of people get annoyed about it because he's very good at what he does.
Yeah, he's done an absolutely superb job, and if he manages to get them into the Champions League with the squad he's got, because a bit like Brighton, the depth just isn't there. We haven't suffered as many injuries this time around, but the depth is certainly lacking in comparison to the other 2 or 3 teams chasing the same prize, i.e. Man City, Forest, Chelsea, and Villa as well, to add in a fourth. I guess usually, Tom, in a game like this, with Newcastle potentially could be third by the time they kick off, they maybe have dropped down a couple of positions given other results, but you would often think the pressure is on them because they've got the biggest prize to achieve. But as we've said, Brighton still have a chance of European football. Is there any pressure on them to get European football? I know you said you kind of hit or miss really. You're not too bothered either way, but from a kind of a boardroom level, is there expectation there to get European football?
I think the expectation is fight for a European place, definitely. And I think we've definitely provided that to the boardroom and even to the fans. Again, it just goes to the whole injury sentiment. I think we've lost a lot of games because we haven't had the players that we wanted and the players that we invested in. Not the fact that they haven't turned up. It's just the fact that they've had injuries and they've had to play catch up and new signings that haven't worked out because of injuries, and then getting themselves back into training, getting themselves to understand the style of play, and then playing. That's very intense in a very demanding season anyway. So if you don't have a solid pre-season behind you, you're playing catch up throughout the whole of the season. It takes a while, and I think a lot of everyone in the boardroom will be very, very happy and encouraged with what Herz has brought to the table. And I think the first thing a lot of these people are going to be saying, guys, if we didn't have these injuries, we would definitely turned a lot of the losses into wins and some of the draws into wins, and we'll be in a very different conversation. It's the classic if, buts, and maybes, and the classic football cliches. But a lot of the fan base can be encouraged with what we're seeing, and I think it's very exciting. And I think it's definitely, again, we always seem to go under the radar with a lot of people and a lot of pundits beyond the whole, they're a great little club, aren't they? And the way they set themselves up. But I think next season, I think we might surprise a few people and we'll still be in that European conversation. I think we'll be in a much better position this time next year. I like to think anyway. A man can dream, I guess, but it'll be interesting to see what happens next time we talk to each other, and hopefully it'll be a more positive one.
Well, all that remains to be done, Tom, is to get your score prediction for Sunday. How is it going to go?
Newcastle are going to go out for blood. I think I can see this going only one way, and it'll be a Newcastle win. And I'm going to go with a 3-1 win away.
Wow. Okay, that is music to the ears of our listeners and viewers. Not something I had anticipated before we started recording. Wow, I'd take that. I mean, I would have taken a point before speaking to you, Tom, but now I'm fully expecting all 3 points. I thought you'd come in a little bit more chirpy, a little bit more bouncy, but like I said, maybe
I'm chirpy. Don't get me wrong, but also I'm a bit of a realist, and I think I just think that Newcastle have got a lot at their table, and I'll be very silly to go in with this with a prediction to think that if Brighton get a point, I'm going to be over the moon. If we win, I'll be in dreamland. But realistically, I just think Newcastle want European football more than us. I think they want Champions League. They've got a taste for cup wins now, and I think they just really want to set that standard of being like, we've earned the right to be here. This is why we're in the conversation, and we're in the business end of the season. It's all a case of who wants it more, and I think Newcastle will go in there wanting a lot more.
Wow. I mean, I had predicted a defeat on the match preview. That's how I was feeling coming into this. game, but I've now spoken to you, so I might go back and edit the match preview and change my result now. It's going to be an interesting one, live on Sky. I'm guessing at that time of kickoff, is it? It must be 2:30. I haven't checked. I will check later and let you guys know for sure. But you can always cover it or watch it rather, or follow it rather on our website. Our dedicated Match Day Live blog will be up and running. You can also follow Eddie Howe's press conference on Friday morning, where we probably won't get an update on Joe Linton, or we'll get told he's out injured and then he'll start, because they're the games Eddie Howe loves to play and we wouldn't change him for the world. Do hit thumbs up, do hit subscribe. Thank you to Tom as always for providing the insight into Brighton. Enjoy your weekend, ladies and gents, and fingers crossed for Newcastle United getting all 3 points against Brighton on Sunday.